Welcome back to GrokTALK, brought to you by the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers, cnht.org, and Granite Grok, the bloggers, at granitegrok.com. You can check us out on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spreaker, Blip TV, Ustream, YouTube, and of course,
Blip TV
at granitegrok.com. Where we aren't is hard to find.
Nowadays, anyway.
Hey, it's a tagline. Right.
You're right, that is a good line. You're going to have to write that down.
Where we are, I'm not going to write it down. I'll forget it. I'll have to listen to the show, and then I'll know. All right. We'd like to thank Steve Kenda, who's still with us. He's going to hang out for our next segment, and which is good because we have another candidate for state senate in New Hampshire here, Gary Daniels, and then in the segment after that we have State Senator Bob Smith calling in. So
not state senator.
U.S. Senator Bob Smith, former U.S. Senator, soon to hopefully, maybe, who knows, you never know, be another silly senator.
Senior senator.
Senior senator.
As he kind of let Kelly Ayotte know that if he wins, he will be the senior senator, which I thought I laughed when I heard that.
In more ways than one.
Yes, this upon her her declaration of undying loyalty to Scott Brown.
Yeah, well, we love that. But anyway, let's talk about Gary Daniels, who's joined us, sir. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Steve.
We're going to be, if you've ever watched a bunch of rabbits run away from a wolf in a field, that's where our conversations go. We talk about squirrels. We're going to move around a lot, but we're going to try to stay focused. So if we wander too far afield, just give us a look. And that's just how we do things around here.
That's okay.
So
I'm
anyway,
used to the legislature.
This is, yeah. So you are running, or you're in a primary, technically, now, for to run. Well, Bragdon's retiring.
Correct.
So there will be
maybe already retired.
Sitting Republican, right? And have the Democrats announced any candidates yet for this district?
No, they have not.
Okay, because they didn't run anybody against him 2 years ago.
And I was actually talking to one this morning, and he kind of alluded that they weren't sure that they could raise one.
Well, there's the problem of the district, which is extremely Republican. It used to be Merrimack and Bedford's now part of a different district, which Andy Sanborn's in. But when it was Merrimack and Bedford and Amherst, and it was like 2 or 3 of the most Republican towns in the entire state, which is why they separated them, because Merrimack has 25,000 people and Bedford has, I don't know, not quite that many, or maybe more at this point, I don't know, but heavily Republican. And they felt like they were wasting all those votes on that district because there was no way you were going to lose the state Senate seat. Merrimack has elected the town of Merrimack has elected 2 Democrats to the House in the last 15 years that I've been there. One of them was very moderate. And even 2 years ago, when Democrats had a really good year and there were a lot of questionable voters in the state voting for Democrat candidates, they still only got 1 in my town, and we have 8 state reps. So it's very difficult to get Republicans not get Republicans elected. And that particular Senate district is a great district for Republicans. I can see why they wouldn't want to waste the money, but I can't see that they just let it run unopposed. But we'll see. Anyway, so you are running.
I am.
But you have a primary.
I have a primary. There are 3 people from Merrimack who have signed up already. So
one, I believe, is Dan Hines.
Dan Hines, Dan Dwyer, and Maureen Mooney.
Ah.
Oh, Maureen's running too, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
Dan Dwyer. Okay. I know Dan Dwyer. Not well, but I know him, and I've met Maureen.
Yes. All right. So what differentiates you from the other 3?
18 years of House experience, an 18-year conservative record, liberty-minded. You were mentioning during the break that it's important to have somebody representing you that you know you can count on for the votes. That would be me.
Yes, just for our listeners during the break, if you've been reading Granite Grok, you know my phrase now. Consistency yields trust, which yields votes. Consistency builds trust, which yields votes. So we don't want to have to guess how you're going to vote. So what you're saying is that we will know what your philosophy is before the votes come?
Consistency in some areas is very good. And I have been consistent. I'm consistent against taxes. I'm against bloated government. You know, my philosophy is limited government, free enterprise, and states' rights.
So how does that expand to some of the politics here in New Hampshire? What are some of the issues that are driving you, and how would you apply that philosophy?
probably easier to mention the ones that aren't affected by that. Certainly the overspending is a big driver. I may not benefit in my lifetime, but my children and my grandchildren are going to be affected by the spending that is just totally out of control. We need to get a handle on that. Unfortunately, 6 out of the last 8 years have pretty much been dominated by Democrats in the House side of it, and thank goodness we had some semblance of Republicanism in the Senate this time. It was a slim 13-11 margin. What I'm looking for is to expand that majority to something more like 16 so that we can override a governor's veto if we need to. And that is another position that's just sorely needed. There's so much we could have accomplished in 2011-12 if we had the corner office.
We have, as I was just saying, we have 8 reps in Merrimack, and some of them are what we call wave voters. When the Democrats are in control, their HRA scores tend to go down. When Republicans are in control, their HRA scores go up. So in the Senate, it seems like when there's 2 years ago, we had a whole bunch of Republicans in the Senate, and some pretty solid ones, and they did some pretty decent things. And then this year, it's been a very slim margin, and they've done a lot of things that aren't that great. We've had a lot of bad legislation come from Republicans in the state Senate, and they voted for it and defended their votes, and it's gotten kind of ugly. And as a result, we have lots of people running for the state Senate this year, which is a good thing. I mean, there's a lot more engagement this year. But I don't know, what do you think about that? If you get yourself in a situation where you get elected and you're in a Senate where you only have a 1-vote majority, this year, all they did, it seems like, except for a few exceptions, is make deals with Democrats. Is that,
I think there are areas where it may be conducive to making deals, and that primarily if you have not got the votes to stop what will certainly be bad legislation that passes. If you have a chance to water that down some, one might take the stance that that's a better deal. On the other hand, you can simply say this is the right way, and even though I'm going to be part of a large minority, it'll pass, but it won't pass on my vote. But I think it really depends on the issue. I think certainly when you have the votes, you need to get the work done, because the only thing we're guaranteed is 2 years in this job. And if we spend the 2 years just compromising to make things a little bit at a time, then we don't really accomplish what we need to. And frankly, I see this next term is something that we're going to have to spend a large effort in turning back a lot of the garbage that has passed over the past few years.
And I'm smiling, sort of sighing at the same time, because we've heard so often from the Democrats, don't touch that, it's settled law. But yet, when they've done things, they don't want when the wave comes through, they don't want the Republicans coming through and undoing it. But yet when the Republicans do things, and now it should be settled law, they say, oh, it's an injustice, we have to change it. So we see the wave elections playing that game as well. But I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Steve. A smaller government, more limited government, the way the founders, not only at the U.S. level, but the New Hampshire level as well, wanted a large, expansive, vibrant civil society. Government is crowding that out. The high spending, I believe, is coming from a lack of being able to really put a list of priorities together. What should state government do? What should it not be doing? Even if it's nice. It's sort of like, what are the absolute needs that it should be concentrating on? What are the wishes that perhaps might be okay? But what should be left down to the county and the local levels that the state is doing right now? And I don't mean let's cram the expense of that stuff down, but what is it that government at the state level should be doing, and what should it get out of the business of being at all? And I ask because you've got 18 years in the House. You know this stuff well.
And I've been on the Labor Committee for 18 years. And I have seen an onslaught.
Hard labor for 18 years.
Hard labor for 18 years.
See the calluses on his hand.
I have seen an onslaught of legislation that's just so heavy-handed on business that there is no incentive for business to stay in state, to come to the state, to expand in the state. You know, my priority is jobs in the economy. We need to create pro-economic growth policies that foster private job creations, not government job creations, but private job creations that are sustainable. In addition, we need to bring in those companies that are going to provide a field for those getting out of college in New Hampshire to stay in New Hampshire. You know, we do a good job overall in educating our children in comparison to the rest of the country. But we also pay a high price. I think in Milford it's up around $13,000.
In Guilford it's much higher than that.
And yes, I heard Governor's Island was even
yeah.
more so than that.
Yeah, they're thinking that they ought to split off from Guilford, and I can't say that I blame them.
And maybe we could swap them for Killington
they
or
should
something.
they should just outsource it, put it to bid, their entire education complex. Just, you know what? We want to educate some children. We have like 1,000 kids or whatever it is.
50, yeah,
Tell me how much it'll cost you to educate these kids, and then winner takes all.
Well, it goes back to the question I asked Steve. Right now we have public unions, public schools, government run. Well, what about private schools, charter schools, online schools, homeschooling? Let the public education money follow the child with the parents making the choice as to where to go. Is that part of that mix of fostering an even better and more vibrant educational environment that then translates into the business environment?
And I have no problem with that. I mean, that falls right along my way of thinking. I've been a strong supporter of charter schools, of homeschooling, of alternate schooling. I want to see the child get the best education he or she can. I think we are doing very little in the way of technology in using that technology for the benefit of the children. Even in public schools, I think we're only using a small part of what we could use. I'm looking at a larger picture, and I mean, take for instance the Northern Pass. Now, however you stand on the Northern Pass, and I don't agree with the eminent domain part of it, but if they can resolve that 30 miles of Northland, whether it's burying cable or what, my understanding is that PSNH puts fiber optic cable in their rights of way. This gives us a chance as a state to have fiber optic laid from the Canadian border to Deerfield. Think of what we could do in energizing the North Country if we had fiber optic running through it. Perhaps instead of sending the call centers over to India, we can move them to northern New Hampshire. How about as a state we stop throwing money at bricks and mortars because enrollment overall is going down? How about taking that money and putting it into technology, into infrastructure, hooking schools together so that you can have virtual classrooms? This creates a whole new dynamic in teaching, because now you would have teachers that would need to learn how to teach online. You can create a classroom, let's say somebody that needed advanced calculus. You're not going to hire a $50,000 teacher in the classroom to do that. But maybe you could take that one person in Bow, and the two over in Portsmouth, and the three in Keene, and one up in Berlin, and put together a virtual classroom where now a teacher can teach the things that the kid needs.
A teacher from anywhere.
From anywhere
on the planet.
Yeah.
Right.
Or even as Steve was talking about earlier, Khan's Academy. And if you slide over just a little bit, we can get you. Yeah, my big head will
Oh, see, now
it.
they can see him.
Well, that's why he's here, to be seen and heard.
Myself, yeah.
But yeah, you had brought up the Khan Academy.
The available videos, I mean, at no cost, with tutorials, with lesson plans, with the dashboard availability for teachers. I mean, I think it's I know there's some Bill Gates money coming in. I think they may be looking at some of the Common Core stuff. So I've still got some reservations. I think it needs more research, but certainly an experiment. Just try something different, because what's in place now is not working.
Well, and it takes a while to progress, too. It was back around 94 and 95. I introduced the bill that established the Distance Learning Commission in New Hampshire. And look where we have gone with online education since then.
But has it been government-driven, or has it been private sector-driven? Khan's Academy was just something some guy did for his cousins. I mean, that was it. And then it just mushroomed because it was a great idea. Lots of universities are now putting most of their classrooms online, massively online classes. I mean, it is the disruptive technology. But I want to, and I know that we're probably getting close to the 60-minute break.
Break, yep.
But I want to address that back to the business environment here in New Hampshire when we come back.
Okay. We are speaking to Gary Daniels, who is running for State Senate in District 11 now. It's changed, and it used to be 19, and then now it's 11, 24. Yeah. We'll be right back.
He tried to make us believe he was a fiscal conservative, but State Senator Dave Booten has been deceiving New Hampshire taxpayers. Like a wolf in sheep's clothing, he claimed to be one of us, pretending to blend in, but all along voting like a liberal Democrat. He voted to raise your gas tax by another 23%, taking a bigger bite out of our wallets every time we're at the pump. And oh, how he drooled at the opportunity to vote to expand Obamacare, which will result in higher taxes and longer wait times in the emergency room. And now the Senate wants to pass a bill to prevent us from criticizing Senator Booten's vote? Call Senator Booten at 603-203-5391 and tell him that we're on to his wolf in sheep's clothing routine. Tell him to stop pretending to be a fiscal conservative and start voting like one. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
GrokTALK. All right, we are back talking about education at the moment with Gary Daniels and Steve Kenda, and of course Skip Murphy is here, and I am Steve McDonald. This is Granite Grok and GrokTALk.
Yes, sir.
So, continue.
Yes. So
continue your grilling.
Yeah. We're talking.
We'll shine a light on him. How do you feel about education? I'm just kidding. We're not like that.
Steve?
What?
Cork it.
Okay, fine. Well, anyway, I'm going to just turn off Skip's mic and talk all I want. See? Corked it. Corked yours. Anyway, let's continue with that because that was a great conversation. Talking about technology and education, these are all great.
Right. And that's a precursor for reinvigorating the business environment, we would hope, here in New Hampshire. But there's a lot of barriers to entry. There's a lot of barriers to growth. And we talked about it with Steve in the last segment. You brought it up as an issue that you've been on the Labor Commission, or Labor Committee, and you've seen all this stuff coming down. How much of this spaghetti that's been piled on to the environment can be done away with because it's just a burden and really doesn't do anything for us? What kinds of things would you suggest?
There's numerous things from licensing burdens to I think there were 5 or 6 different bills this year that would have created special classes of people. For instance, like protection, or give priority to, I guess they call it discrimination. That's the word of the day. You couldn't discriminate against the unemployed in terms of hiring. You couldn't discriminate against somebody because they had a criminal background. You couldn't discriminate against somebody based on their credit history. It's all these things with government trying to tell business how to run their business, yet they have no vested interest in that business.
And I think that's the key. These are people outside of the actual operating environment who believe, once again, especially in the progressive mode, believe they know better than you how to run your life and your business and your family and your kids and this and that. It's got to stop. So the protected classes is certainly a big barrier in life everywhere, and under the Obama administration we see this more and more and more under this rubric of disparate outcomes. It's just another clever way of saying we're instituting quotas and suck it up and smile. What else kinds of things?
Well, I think the big thing is that the role of government should be to make sure that employees get treated fairly, that they're not being taken off. Unfortunately, the mindset of the majority right now seems to be that business is evil and exists to take advantage of the worker. And my feeling is that government should just get out of the way. Let businesses run their business, and the only thing we're monitoring is to make sure that employees are getting paid, that they're not being harassed, things like that. starting a business in New Hampshire used to be difficult, because we've had numerous people come into the Labor Committee facing hundreds of $1,000s of fines because they didn't do something, like maybe they didn't file workers' compensation on someone because they didn't know or whatever. So I went to the Labor Commissioner and I said, when somebody starts a business in New Hampshire, how do they know what they're subject to? And he said, well, we have all that on our website. So I said, so you expect that person to go to the Labor website and weave their way through that to find out? So why don't you make up a CD that has all the labor laws on it and leave it at the Secretary of State's office, so that when somebody comes up to register their business, they're given a welcome packet from the Department of Labor saying...
I don't know if welcome's the right word, but okay.
Welcome, give us your money.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
Well,
You're giving us you are going to give us your money.
No, I mean, I think we're trying to...
We can say things that most people can't.
No, this is that focus thing you were talking about, so we need to come back. So what,
2 points.
No, what we're looking at here is that we want people to start up businesses. We want people to employ other people. But we also want them to follow the labor laws that are in existence. So when somebody comes to register their business, they receive a letter saying, congratulations for starting your new business. As a new business owner, you will be subject to certain labor laws. Those labor laws are on this CD. It's your responsibility to know them and adhere to them. In the first month that we did that, we handed out over 400 CDs. And since then, not one person has come into the Labor Committee talking about the hundreds of thousands of dollars of fines that they're facing because they didn't know the laws. Something just as simple as that, in getting things to work a little bit smoother in government. And I think it's a constant struggle to make the Department of Labor a partner with people who want to start businesses, as opposed to it being looked at as an adversary.
What do you think, Steve? You own a business.
I think certainly if you're starting a business, understanding what the rules are, the rules of the playing field, is like opening up a board game. You read the rules on how to play first. So we start a business. What is it the state is expecting from us? I think that's fair. And to actually think that someone who's going to go visit the Department of Labor's website and figure out what it is they need to do, I think is
absurd.
Exactly.
Because there's a lot to do when you start a business, and that's not the first thing on your mind, probably. Especially if it's just you, and then you hire somebody and, oh, no.
That's when the world really changes.
And you bring up a good thing, because I'm an employee right now, but I've been an employer in the past. We owned a daycare center, highly regulated, adversarial. And I see that over and over again, especially when the Democrats come along, because they look at as workers as victims, and they have to be protected, that the business owners are evil, trying to strip them of everything, pay them the lowest, yada, yada, yada. When we first took over a failing business, they were very helpful. They were friendly. They point out things that they had to do on the checklist when the daycare, when DCYF would come out to do the evaluation. They'd say, look, you need this, this, and this, and this. And that was great. Sort of like the CD sending that out. But then there was a change in leadership. And all of a sudden it became very adversarial. I'll never forget the day I got dinged because I didn't have a thermometer in a regular refrigerator, freezer type environment. I wasn't using the freezer. It was turned off. Using the fridge, but not the freezer. I got dinged for not having a thermometer. They could check the temperature. Guys, there's no ice in there. It's not being used. But you're going to ding me anyways? They were looking for things to say, well, we're doing something. We're earning our pay. And it became very, very difficult. But your labor commission is one thing. There's lots of things that you've got to worry about. And Steve, you've probably run into this. It isn't just the Labor Commission. It's DES. It's this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing. One of the stupidest things I ever saw was you could rent an expediter in New York City because the rules were so labyrinthian.
Somebody's calling, but we only got like a minute.
Okay.
Call back in a few minutes, please.
Yes. that they had to hire people to help them scoot through all the laws. And then New York City decided to make its own Department of Expediters to get you through that. I mean, are we getting to that point here in New Hampshire?
Well, sure. I mean, when we have time, I'm happy to discuss it. We got the gun club issue right in my hometown in Northampton, where someone filed a complaint, and they've been shooting guns for 70 years there, and all of a sudden the EPA, the DES, everyone's involved.
They get complaints all the time from people who live in homes that were built decades after the gun club was there.
Exactly.
So,
But I think the thing happening in Hampton is simply because they were successful somewhere else. So
exactly.
No,
Right. So
no.
we've got about 2 minutes left before this segment's over, and then we're going to call Senator Smith.
Websites. Contact.
KendaForSenate.com.
and danielsforsenate.com.
What?
Yet to be, it's close to going online. Not there yet, though.
Emails?
Info or Steve at KendaForSenate.com.
And I'm planning on Daniels for Senate.
You want to get that? Keep calling. All right, we're going to see who this is. But anyway, we have about a minute left, and I think this is great. We need to have. I have more people from, more of your competitors to call.
Hello?
Have come in, and let me turn this.
Hi, Brad. We're just about
There we
to
go.
the end of our
Hang on a
segment
second.
here.
Okay. Yeah. This is what you have when you have all your phone calls taken in the studio while you're on the air.
Too late to chime in real quick?
He's got 30
seconds.
seconds. Go. Hurry up.
Ask your question, Brad.
Yeah, I just want to say in regards to businesses being portrayed as evil, I think there's a war going on right now, or there should be, between the establishment, the Republicans, and local business. And it's the businesses that align themselves with the Chamber of Commerce, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, that makes it look as though businesses do not care for American employees. So I think once that is addressed and businesses start to push to be more, economically nationalistic, I think then they will gain the support of the public that they're looking for.
All right, I got to cut you off. All right, that was Radical Moderate, a longtime commenter and a friend of Granite Rock, and we may not get to address that, but that's how it works around here. Things happen. Gary, thank you for coming in. Steve, whoever's sticking around, we're going to call Senator Bob Smith in a second, and we'll be right back with the next segment of GrokTALK.
New Hampshire is famous for scenic drives, but they're tough to enjoy when you're on your way to the doctor. Because Obamacare limits your choices, some will have to drive more than an hour to see a doctor. What's health insurance worth if care isn't there when you need it? Jean Shaheen voted for Obamacare, putting your doctors and hospitals further out of reach. Tell Senator Shaheen Obamacare is not working for New Hampshire.
She tried to make us believe she was a fiscal conservative, but State Senator Nancy Stiles has been deceiving New Hampshire taxpayers. Like a wolf in sheep's clothing, she claimed to be one of us, pretending to blend in, but all along voting like a liberal Democrat. She voted to raise your gas tax by another 23%, taking a bigger bite out of our wallets every time we're at the pump. And oh, how she drooled at the opportunity to vote to expand Obamacare, which will result in higher taxes and longer wait times in the emergency room. And now the Senate wants to pass a bill to prevent us from criticizing Senator Stiles' vote. Call Senator Stiles at 603-918-0553 and tell her that we're on to her wolf in sheep's clothing routine. Tell her to stop pretending to be a fiscal conservative and start voting like one. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Grok TV.